Good evening, everyone. So glad to see everybody here for the Soldiers to Sidelines Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series number 3, the final game of the series, Army versus Navy, coming up on December 10th. And if this is your first time visiting with us tonight, we discuss some aspect of athletics and coaching and leadership. Tonight's focus is going to be on mental toughness with a representative from one of the past classes of the two competing football teams. So with us tonight, we're going to have Bob Weissenfels representing the Navy football squad, and then representing the Army, we have Mike Mayweather, who will be joining us here shortly. He's just working on some technical difficulties. And these unbelievable webinars and discussions we have are supported by our generous donors. And tonight is Giving Tuesday. So if you haven't made a donation yet, please support our soldier coaches and make a donation to Soldiers to Sidelines so we can continue to deliver this incredible content. And without further ado, if you don't know me, I'm Harrison Bernstein, founder and executive director of Soldiers to Sidelines, and I'll be facilitating the discussion tonight. So,
radio check, gentlemen.
Oh, yes, Mike.
I am in.
Just in time. So I was just prepping everybody how you had this last minute fix on your camera. So you just came in at the most opportune time because I was about to introduce both of you. And since Mike is here, we're gonna make his introduction first. His introduction is so special because he's the only one that has a video introduction already made about him, since he was inducted into the Army Football Hall of Fame in 2005. And I just figured I listened to this intro, and the narrator's voice is just way better than mine. I mean, like, this is the real deal. So I'm going to tune everyone's attention here to my screen as I share my screen. And please welcome the legendary Mike Mayweather.
Michael Mayweather, football. He's the only Army football player to have compiled multiple 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Mike Mayweather eclipsed the 1,000-yard plateau 3 times in his career, en route to establishing the Academy's career rushing record with 4,299 yards. So dominant was Mayweather that he eclipsed Army's career rushing record, held by legendary running back Glenn Davis, in the final game of his junior season. In a sparkling senior campaign, Mayweather set the Academy's single-season rushing standard with 1,337 yards, was named a first-team All-American, and finished 10th in the Heisman Trophy voting. In addition to his rushing record, Mayweather forged Academy standards with over 5,500 all-purpose yards, in addition to 21 100-yard rushing games. He also ranked 2nd in kickoff return yards and 4th in scoring for a career. Mayweather amassed 1,022 ground yards in 1988, a total that helped the Black Knights earn a date opposite Alabama in the John Hancock Sun Bowl. From the class of 1991, Michael Mayweather.
I mean, what is better than that? I could not do a better job than that, so we just had to leave there. So, hey, some also cool notes too that you might not know about Mike. He was recruited by a original soldier coach, a Marine named Jay Robertson. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yes, sir. You are very accurate about that.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you here. And if you just want to say any welcoming words before we introduce Bob.
I will. Thank you so much. I will have to say that there were a lot of people that had a lot to do with all those yards. A lot of linemen, a lot of my running mates. I see Ben's out there. I think about half of those belong to you, Ben. So, but yes, Jay Robinson was my recruiter. I can't say Jay. If everybody who knows Jay, they know the character that he is, and so it was an interesting recruiting process. But I still came to West Point. So,
well, that probably made Jay's career, right? Like, so his whole recruiting legend. They're like, he's still to this day saying, "I recruited Mike Mayweather."
That's not true, though. I have to tell this story, and actually, Jay would. He would admit it to it. It's funny because when I became a GA, I got to know Jay a lot more so than I did when I was a player. And naturally, we became pretty good friends. And one of the stories that a lot of people don't know about is that West Point really wasn't that high on me. In fact, I almost did not get into West Point because they were not going to, my understanding is they were not going to tag me as a football player. And if Irish Bulls, who was my mentor and actually my liaison officer coming from my high school in St. Louis, if she doesn't go to DPE and go the extra mile to get them interested and get them to really, really tag me as a recruit, I don't go to West Point because I think they were pushing me to the prep school, which was not on my list of things to do. Which I look back though was probably would have been better for me, but I wasn't planning at that stage. And but Jay Robinson later on basically admitted to me, Mike, I just didn't realize what you were, and I didn't hold it against him because a lot of people missed on me. So.
Mike, we're going to come back to that statement because that's a real great setup for the concept of mental toughness that we're going to discuss here. But before we get into this conversation, really want to introduce Bob Weissenfels, who is representing the Naval Academy. Bob graduated from Hanford High School in Richland, Washington in 1986, and he just tells us that he's currently living in the same area where he grew up. He played football, basketball, and track there. He was an all-state quarterback and defensive back and competed in the state track and field meet in the javelin, the 4x100, and the 4x400. He had a scholarship to play football at Eastern Washington, and he was asked if he was interested in the Naval Academy by, excuse me if I can't pronounce coach's name. Is it Pete Optikar?
That's correct. Yep. Pete Optikar.
Pete Optikar. Well, he was just as influential in your life, very similar to the way I think Jay Robertson influenced Mike to get to the academy. So Coach Optikar was a 1961 graduate of the Naval Academy where he played football with Roger Staubach and went on to serve in the Marine Corps. So later, Bob played football and ran track against Pete's son, Pete Optikar's son. And as a result of the timing, he submitted his application and paperwork to the Naval Academy on day one in Annapolis. So we have to go into that a little bit. Like, how did that happen? So as a result, Bob graduated the Naval Academy in 1990. He was captain of the 1989 football team. He was an all-East selection. He also ran track and field. He was the IC quadruple A indoor pentathlon, and then he was a third company commander. So this is one of the only athletes that I've ever heard this happen to. Stellar career as a football player in college, served in the Navy, but also was the captain of the 1992 U.S. Olympic bobsled team. So now you start to see like grit, toughness, all these things start to come out. And the bobsled to me is a marriage of the toughness and the acceleration from football, all the events he competed in track and field, and that military experience. So in the Navy, he was a naval aviator, helicopter pilot, CH-46 and CH-60S with 3 command tours. He retired in 2014 as an 06. So while serving, Bob is a soldier coach. He coached multiple youth sports and was fortunate enough to coach high school football and track and field. So due to his work commitments, he was unable to dedicate the hours required for high school sports, but he found an outlet by coaching CrossFit at a CrossFit gym called Unrestrained. So he's currently working at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Richland, Washington as a project manager. And he's really proud of his 4 kids who all play sports. And one of them, Adam, right, is graduating the Naval Academy
just graduated.
Just graduated. Unbelievable. Yep. And he played spring football, correct?
Yes.
Unbelievable. So you're really paying it forward and passing it along. And everybody, please welcome Coach Bob Weissenfels.
Thank you very much, Harrison.
So let's get this started talking about mental toughness. And I want to pass the ball back over to Mike. And what, how did your toughness express itself once you were told maybe no by West Point? Like, like how did you persevere through that, and where did you start to recognize this toughness?
Okay, well, I've got to give you a little bit of the background there too. Again, I'm from St. Louis, and I was a really good athlete in St. Louis. I was all-time, I was all-state from sophomore through senior year. Actually, my junior year, I was all-state junior and all-state offense and defense. So I was going into my senior year, I won't say I'm pretty high on myself. But of course, everybody knows I'm 5'5", and I
I knew
came in
that.
at 187 pounds. And so the recruiting process wasn't a very kind one to me. In fact, it was a great learning point for me, because I had to make some decisions at that point in my life based on real life scenarios that a lot of kids, especially athletes growing up, don't tend to face until they're, pretty much kind of at the end of their tenure. But pretty much at that point, going into West Point, actually making my decision going to college, I had to decide, I had to make a decision about what my future was going to look like, because I had several colleges walk away from me. And the devastating one was Stanford. I was a pretty good student and went to a pretty good preparatory school. And I actually wanted to go to Stanford. And my best friend in high school, a tight end, Turner Bauer, he actually wound up getting recruited by them and going there, but they dropped me the week of my visit. That same week, I got dropped. I was being recruited, not heavily, by Notre Dame and a couple of other schools. And the big hammer came to me from Georgia Tech. I actually, at that point, it was pretty much between Georgia Tech, Missouri, and West Point. And I went on my visit to Georgia Tech, and it just so happens that Bobby Ross had just taken over as the head coach there. I don't know if you guys remember Alabama's head coach, and I can't think of his name, Bill Curry. Okay. Bill Curry was the actual coach that recruited me at Georgia Tech, but his staff left Georgia Tech to go to Alabama, who we wound up playing my sophomore year at the Sun Bowl. But at any rate, when I got there, they didn't know who I was. And so I was really kind of despondent at that time. And so, and then West Point, it was kind of quasi more than anything else. And so I really, at that point, I was making a decision based on the rest of my life. And so when I got into West Point and when I got to football camp, and it's interesting because all of my classmates, they want to give me trouble about stepping in to Army and just automatically being given my status as a top recruit. But the first person that I went up against, and everybody knows how JY works, you got to earn your stripes. The very first person that I went up against at West Point, very first practice, was Greg Gatson. And so in retrospect, I realized just how far down the depth chart I really was. But that lasted for about 3 plays. And the words that I remember from JY was, "Get him out of here." And so from that point forward, the rest is pretty much kind of history. And so moving from that point, what happened to me, I really played with a chip on my shoulder. And that chip was more than anything else to show everybody else that I was who I thought I was. And more than anything else, I consider myself very fortunate. And as you guys, as being former players, all know that it's about being at the right place at the right time. The reality of it for me is, if Torrey Crawford doesn't go down, my freshman year at the 4th game, he actually tears up his knee. And I don't know if you guys remember Torrey Crawford, but Torrey was being touted as a potential Heisman candidate. I think Torrey's class of 89, right? Is he 89? Or was he 88? He was 88. but he was being touted as a Heisman candidate, but he goes down. And if he doesn't go down, I don't play as much as I do as a freshman. And, who knows? Things doesn't, possibly don't go as they go.
It's an incredible story. And you mentioned some names of folks who are dear to Soldiers of Sideline supporters, donors, and Coach Curry. Um, he's a big contributor, as was Coach Ross, and of course Greg Gadsden as well. And when Greg tells his story, he had a very similar story, and so many of the folks on this Commander in Chief Trophy webinar from the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, and of course West Point have very similar stories of like earning your stripes. It seems like the academies are just excellent at building this toughness or pulling it out of you. And I'm going to throw this ball back over here to Bob and tell me about your story, because you had kind of like a similar track where you weren't going to the Naval Academy. Someone kind of like Sherpa'd you along, and then you found it and then had a stellar career.
Yeah, I would say, very fortunate. And I would say, I think, sometimes just timing or just luck, but, there are people that have looked out for me that set me up for success. And, at the time, being young, you don't realize it, but then afterwards, I'm very grateful and fortunately able to stay in contact with some of those. Pete Optikar, you mentioned, is one of those who literally walked up to me during track of my senior year and said, "Hey, you want to go to the Naval Academy?" And so I had the grades, I had everything else. And I think I was very fortunate that he stepped into my life and had that opportunity. But, you talk about mental toughness, and I'm not sure we all have it, but I think I'm very grateful to sports and what it's provided me. Particular football, what I love about football is you can go up and you can make a mistake and you immediately get to do something about it, hopefully something smart, but you never know. But then you could contrast that with baseball, where you might not, maybe you make an error and you won't see the ball again for a while. So how do you respond to those situations? I don't know. Again, I think sports sets us up for success. I will admit, I didn't come with all the mental toughness, and I think the Naval Academy helped set me up for that. During plebe year, that first 6 weeks, I was, I thought I was going to play football, and then they told me unless I was recruited or came for a recruiting visit that I wasn't going. And then shortly thereafter, I actually walked up and told my company officer I wanted to go. I wanted to leave. And he said, "Wait one more week." A week later, I walked into his office and said, "I'm ready to go." And he wasn't there. And I was determined. I made my decision. And then that afternoon, one of the coaches, or one of the former players who was an 06 there, dressed in all his whites, said, "Hey, Bobby, let's take a walk." And we took a little walk around the field, skipped practice, and somehow he convinced me to stay. And I'm very fortunate because it worked out well.
Yeah.
Let me echo what you just said there, Bob, and you hit it right on the nose. We always, we constantly talk about luck, and one of the things I've learned in my life is that luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. And things, I thoroughly believe this. Things happen in your life for a reason, and you just always have to have the correct disposition, the correct mindset, and the correct belief to take advantage of those opportunities. And man, I look back and the script that I've had in my life, I couldn't have written a better one, and it's got nothing to do with me. It's just, the right people coming along at the right time, people, the camaraderie, just the teamwork. It's all of those things coming in to create situations and scenarios that pretty much live with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. But like you said, you have to be prepared for it. You can't it just doesn't happen.
So guys, I want to ask you a question. and I'm going to ask it to our two guests and to everybody on the call. So please put in the chat what your thoughts are on this. But first, Bob, is is toughness innate within you, or is it something that can be developed, or both?
I that's interesting. I would have to lean towards both, but I think I wouldn't go 50-50 on that. I think that's I think it's a lot of it's based on our own experiences and how we brought up. So whether it's taught or what you're exposed to and how you react to it. You know, if you're faced with adversity and you have some success out of it, I think that makes you stronger. If you don't, then if you don't have success or you have a setback, then how do you respond? And that's the toughness that I don't know. Raising my kids, I wanted to make sure that they were challenged and that they weren't given everything, and that they found success in their own challenges or strife, or you know, the path is part of the process, not giving it to them. And I think that's a far more powerful lesson than being put in a situation where you're going to succeed, and then not be able to use that experience in other aspects of your life. So I think I'd have to lean towards it's something you can teach, but I think you have to do it smartly. It's not a given.
Yeah, because it's like the academies seem to do a very good job in cultivating this toughness. But then as I turn it back over to you, Mike, like you went in with this chip on your shoulder, right? So you had something in you. So what do you think, Mike? Was it already, were you already tough, or did you go to West Point and then they kind of pulled this toughness out of you and developed it more?
Similar to what Bob just said, I think it's kind of a two-tiered thing. I think it's more innate because it's just a grittiness that you're going to survive. However, I don't think it's something that necessarily automatically comes out of you. I think it has to be cultivated. And how is it cultivated? Uh, um, my belief is that it's through the difficulties and the hardships that you deal with in your life and the things that you have to overcome, how you overcome those adversities and how you deal with things that that come to you in life. One of the things that I believe wholeheartedly is that it's not about what happens to you in your life. It's about how you deal with the things that happen to you. That's what makes you who you are and builds your character. And so, yes, you have that ability in us, and I think we all do, but it's your life experiences and the things that you encounter and how you develop those, you develop that toughness as you go through. And so, echoing again what you were saying, Bob, the it is basically, I guess, something JY used to say to us. You've got to meet all meet all obstacles head on, and that's the way you become better. That's the way you learn about yourself, and that's the way you grow. And that's the foundation of that toughness. And to go back and to kind of bring it all together, that is, I was talking to Brett Peckus a few days ago when we were kind of discussing this, and I was we were talking about this a little bit earlier tonight. I was a bitcher and moaner at West Point. For those who remember me, I moaned about all kinds of things at the academy, but one of the things that I took away, and this is what what I was sharing with Brett, and we kind of share the same sentiment. What the academy did to us was it made us relentless, in that it gave us the belief that, what, if we're willing to put the time and the effort into it, we can do and accomplish anything we want. And the reality of it is that's life, man. You know what? You make out of life what you want out of it.
Yeah, man.
Very true.
Steve Tazza wrote something in the chat that really hits home to what you're saying, Mike. He said, one writer put it as, quote, "We can aim for happiness in life, but we are ultimately formed by suffering." And what I hear from you guys in your experiences in the Naval Academy and at West Point, there's a series of adversities that are set up for you that are able to be overcome. And once you overcome one, that's like a notch in development of building toughness, because toughness is really only developed based on the suffering before you, according to Steve Tazza and Mike and you, Bob. So it's almost like when we face these adversities in life, we should lean into them, because that's where we get tougher.
Yeah.
Fact of
I
the
think
matter is, I think that's what there are a whole bunch of things that go on at the academy that you'll look your head at and shake. But the one thing that you can't deny is they are going to put you to the task. The grind, the requirement, the mental aspects of it, the physical aspects, it is going to challenge you to be the reality of it is going to challenge you to be what you can be, the best that you can be, to get out of there. So, I think that is the true nature of what the academies do with regards to their leader development.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's very interesting, or having just had my son walk through that again, reminding me of some of that love and hate discontent I enjoyed. How much they break you down that first year, trying to level the playing field, make sure that you are challenged one way or another, or make sure many of those kids have never failed in their life, and they have a responsibility to make sure they fail and then see how they react. It's not a given that you're going to be perfect every time, and really, what is it, or what do you do when you are faced with adversity, and how do you respond? And I think that's what they do a very good job of, is putting you in positions to challenge yourself, learn from it, and hopefully apply that somewhere down the road when you're challenged again, with something that's actually significant, or maybe even put somebody else's life on the line.
So Bob, this is what we're doing at Soldiers to Sidelines. Like,
Yes.
these are the things that our soldier coaches, you guys here, get to bring to the community to build mental toughness and real joy through suffering, and kind of experiencing happiness sometimes along the way, right? And that's what our job is. And so, Bob, how have you taken these lessons to the youth athletics field? You were coaching track and football, and at a young age. Can you start to do this at the age groups that you were coaching?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's essential, I think. We have opportunities to help influence others, or provide them with skills to be successful in life. And, I think sports is a good vehicle to do that. And if you can do that as a coach, you have an opportunity to, change someone's life. And how many times have I gone up to my former coaches and thanked them for things I didn't understand at the time, or maybe I didn't like them, but later on I realized the impact or the lessons learned and how they made me a better person. And so if I can pay that back, to one or two people, then I feel like I've done my part. But the more you can impact, obviously, the better.
Well, we're going to take a look here about some of your toughness shining through in your college years. And I just want to make sure, can everybody see this grainy film all the way back from the 80s with 4 high def?
That dates it really good.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Don't worry. Your eyes are just fine, everyone. This was the technology back in the time of Jesus, when Jesus played football with Bob Weissenfels at free safety against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And this game, it's remarkable here. The Naval Academy didn't come out with a win here, but as this game develops, Bob, you make some key plays. And there was a couple interceptions that were dropped by some of your teammates, where I just couldn't help but to imagine, like, man, I wish they threw it to Bob, right? If
That
Bob
wasn't Steve, was it?
I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not calling anybody out here.
All right. All right,
And none of that is on
we'll
this
see.
highlight right now. But this really worked. This is interesting. And this Notre Dame game, guys, as we start to play this,
So
the running backs are Ricky Waters. I don't know if you heard of him. Dorsey Levens, right? He was the backup, right?
Yep.
And he had Rocket Ishmael, right?
Yep.
He was on that team. And the backup quarterback was Rick Meyer, who played in the NFL. I mean, this team was just so stacked. And here's, we talk about toughness. This is a big break for Notre Dame. But there's 42 right there. There's Bob pursuing.
damn.
Look, all the way, chasing him down.
So
Look,
Harrison, I was a free safety on that team, but I also led the team in tackles. So what does that tell you?
we don't have the sound playing on this video, but that was actually brought up by one of the commentators. And then you have a couple key hits here in this game, and they were like singing you all the praises, and they were like, it's just never good when your free safety's leading. Exactly.
Just calling it like it is. Good thing you can't see the size of the shoulder pads in that video.
Oh, they were huge. All right, there it is. Jason, getting one of your several tackles. I mean, and like you just think about like some of these hits, guys. I mean, I just got to rewind this a little bit. You're going to see this. It's like we don't see so much of this anymore. I mean, these are huge hits.
I'm feeling every one of those hits these days.
Are you? You don't look like it. Man, this is unreal.
Did you get my interception? That's
Oh, it's
important.
coming. You know it. You mean that one?
Yeah.
That was huge. And if I'm not mistaken, this was like towards the end of the third quarter of this game.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yep.
And that's
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
no, I was going to say that's Steve right there. So got to give him some props while he's.
Number 17?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything I learned at the Naval Academy, I learned from Steve Paz at the dinner table.
Well, Steve lit it up in this game too. He was all over the field.
Geez, I don't think I've ever seen this video.
Well, watch this. This is really cool.
No, I remember that one.
We just watched that.
Backup quarterback's trying to run me over. I said, seriously?
Well, then he left the game after this.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did you flip him, it was like the forced fumble. And it's when you guys just like needed to get these sparks going. Here it is. This is a better shot. Look at this. Boom, form tackle. Get out of here. Ball out. So awesome. So we have a, I'm going to stop my share for a second. I think that was pretty late in the season too.
Yes.
Like what was in your mind? Like, so we start off that game. I mean, there's these NFL Hall of Famers playing on that field right there on the opposite team. And then you're going through that and thinking about toughness, your ability to come up with these huge plays towards the end of the game. I mean, at that time, the score was like 27-0.
Well, yeah, there's no quit. I mean, no stopping. It's giving it everything you have every minute. And, I would say I'd go back to the coaches on that as well. Our defensive back coach, Dean Pease, was phenomenal at setting us up for success or helping us, design. And then, the backer coach, the defensive coordinator, Milan Vuletic, who, he was fantastic, almost knocked himself out one day talking on a whiteboard, headbutted the whiteboard, stumbled, was taken out of the room, trying to get us motivated to play. I mean, they would do everything they could to set us up, and I think they did a great job of really mentally preparing us for what is a very difficult task, or not impossible, but we knew the odds were against us, and to play as well as we did, I think that's ultimately our goal, is to be proud of our performance and how well we performed on the field.
I got a quick question for you, Bob.
Yeah.
How did you guys face those type games with the big underdogs, being big underdogs in those games? For us, it was always I mean, that's we relished in that role. There were several. I mean, like I go back to the Alabama game or the Sun Bowl, which of course, I mean, we were big underdogs in that game. Syracuse, and those were games where we didn't win a whole lot of them, but I actually felt in a lot of scenarios we were at our best in those games. Hell, I mean, we fought Syracuse tooth and nail pretty much every time we played against them. So I always look forward to those games. What was Navy? What were you guys' disposition against teams like that?
No, I totally agree. I think very similar to what you talked about before, going into it with a chip on our shoulder. There's several players on that team who had offers to go other places, or weren't looked at, and wanted to show their worth. Wanted to prove that they belonged to be there. And playing as a team was obviously a big part of that. We didn't have the individuals, but I think collectively as a team, we went into it with, I'm going to take care of my role, and I'm going to make sure my buddy takes care of his. And so it was, I think a team effort was really important in how we managed to perform in those games.
It's kind of funny for me in retrospect, where I got to play in the Hula in Japan Bowl my senior year, and during those two bowl games, I ran into several Syracuse players, and they pulled me aside and we would talk, and what they basically, to a man, told me they hated playing us because they knew they were going to come out beat up. And so I kind of look back and I say to myself, you know what, a lot of games that we probably should have won, but pretty much everybody that we played against realized that, when they walked away, they were, they had a challenge in their hands, and they got beat up. In fact, I look back, the only one game that I really remember, or that I don't want to remember, was my senior year against Wake Forest, and they literally just blew the wheels off of us. But pretty much every game we had was close, and you know what? I think people, for the most part, respected us as players when they played against us.
And Bob, we can't go out on that highlight. I mean, that was an unbelievable play. But I'm just saying, like, you didn't win the game, so I'm gonna cause some serious, like, emotional scars here for what I'm about to do. But Bob, you deserve this. And when I play this, when I show this, when it's done, I want you to tell us all on this call what this moment was like for you in your head and your heart. So I'm going to apologize right now for everybody. There's no sound, but
Yeah.
I only know this because Will tells me every single day how much he hates this moment. Respects it at the same time. But here it is. Army, Navy.
Yeah.
15
Frank
seconds
Shake.
left.
Get away from me. Get away from me.
This guy just made his life.
He was not a happy camper.
So, and this is like this is a good lesson in toughness here too, because.
Oh yeah. So going into this game, as I recall, or I'll make it up, what we had been led to believe as midshipmen, that we were on the brink of another world war, because previously any time that Army beat Navy 4 times in a row, there was a war to follow. And so leading up to this, there were, Navy had lost 3 years in a row, and it was it was on us. And we, if we didn't win, then fate would have it, there would be another war. And that was part of the dialogue. Maybe that's the coaches, or going beyond that. But we had put so much pressure on ourselves, and as you know, it's starting from day one. It is always go Navy, beat Army, go Navy, beat Army, and that's all you hear. And leading up to this, never happened.
And so back to mental toughness, with all this being said, we're putting pressure, like this pregame speech that I'm hearing you say, like, you can't lose 4 times in a row. Now, all the pressure is on Frank here with 15 seconds left, and Army ices him right there.
Yeah.
More time to think. Like, this is another test of the mental toughness. And he comes over to the sideline, and I love this because, like, Bob Usalak, you guys can't hear on the call here, but as he calls him over, I want you to pay attention to Bob's face. Watch Bob's face. See how he's smiling? He's saying, I want you to give me a 7-iron here. Give me a 7-iron and just go out there and knock it. And he's so cavalier about the whole thing. And he's essentially like de-icing the pressure in this moment. And I just thought it was such a great coaching technique where he did it with the words he selected, his demeanor. And like, if you know Bob Usalak, I happened to coach with him at Georgetown for a second. That's a salty dog now. He does not smile and talk about 7-irons very often.
He is a Woody Hayes protege.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand is, why is this the one you picked? I went 3-1 against Navy, and you pull out this. What's up with that? Now, I know I got some class of 90 brethren out there who this is not a good memory for, and I think you just trying to kind of so salt into the wound. So let's pull out some other stuff here.
and we got that for you, Mike. Coming, there's no way we're not letting you do this. But here it is. This is for all of the Navy Brotherhood right there. Just drilling it. So in this moment here, what's going through your mind there, Bob?
I think I'm literally laying on the ground, looking up at the sky, just like ultimate relief. Just like everything I thought up until that point, it was not possible, and all of a sudden, then you're in that situation, and it comes true. And I just utter joy. And then right after that, Teen Peas, the coaches, get your ass up. We got a game to play. So very quickly back to reality. But I mean, it was like nothing mattered. Nothing else mattered. And it was pretty special.
And so me being neutral in all this, clearly, I didn't attend any of the academies, nor did I serve. But
sure you did.
This is my favorite game of the year coming up here on December 10th. For moments like this, like all the dialogue we've had tonight on mental toughness and what goes into this, to have this fierce rivalry. We talk about underdogs and people being favored. I feel like when it comes to these matchups, the commander-in-chief matchups, it's like it's all equal. I mean, this is a rivalry. So whoever's the underdog is going to play up, and like whoever's playing up is going to stay up, and it's just going to be a fierce battle. When it comes down to a final play like that, it's just it's miraculous. It's one of my favorite things about sports. And Mike, we're going to send this right back over to you, my friend, and we're going to watch some of your highlights, and we're going to talk about toughness still, because this is your game versus Rutgers. And Doug Graber, the coach of Rutgers, before the game, he said, Mike, that you display unusual toughness. That was what he said. Like, of all your speed and everything else, he said, you have unusual toughness. And when I was watching this film, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what that is. And Rutgers was really good here, and you guys came back and won this game at the end.
Is this the junior? This is junior years. I'm assuming junior year. I
believe this is 1990.
1990. Okay, that would be my senior year, and that would be There's Cal Thomas at fullback. Yeah, so that would be my senior year. Yeah, they were decent that year. We had a little bit of an off year. Both my junior and senior years, we were stricken by the injury bug. And so, we had teams that we came in both of those years really, really excited and looking for bowl berths and, a lot of things. And we just got caught up in with the injury bugs for the most part. Lost a lot of people my junior year and that year as well. I actually lost my running mate that year, Calvin Cass. Basically Calvin and I were running together basically from sophomore year on, and he gets injured. He gets injured that game, and who knows? Maybe I get 1,400 yards or 1,500 yards that year. But the toughness for me, and we were kind of talking about this last week. I considered myself a football player and not a running back, and so to me, it was about going out there and, football was it was just, I grew up idolizing Earl Campbell. And in all actuality, and I tell the story of, I'm 5'7", and I've basically been 5'7" since I was in 7th grade. So I basically stopped growing. And so I started playing football as a guard and a linebacker. And so I pretty much, I had always been a really good defensive player as well. And I was probably more defensive minded than anything else. And I just literally played running back as a defensive player. And it was literally just that toughness as a football player just came from the fact that, hey, I consider myself a football player. And the one thing I knew that I had more than anybody else wasn't necessarily speed and strength and the other stuff. It was that, you weren't going to outwork me or hustle me. So that's literally, that's what I relied on.
Well, you definitely have the strength and the speed in this video. I'll say that. I don't know what you're talking. So, hey, somebody on this call called you out and said you had a slow 40 time. And I said,
well,
you know
what? I wasn't Deion Sanders fast, but I wasn't slow. Come on now, guys.
No. What I'm saying is whoever was timing you messed up. They should have put that stopwatch on with you getting the ball in your hand.
Right, for the first 2 yards, right? First 10 yards.
Because, and here you are here throwing this key block. And that's what I wanted to show. You talked about being a football player. This is a football play on the ground, creating the seam and letting your buddy score this touchdown.
And I have to echo that because this is my chance to kind of talk to the Mike Mayweather myth, because again, there are people out there saying that all I did was carry the ball. And that's true. I did amass a lot of carries, but I did a lot of blocking as well. And I know a couple of Air Force linebackers that would adhere to that as well. I think Ben could vouch for my blocking ability also. So yeah, it wasn't just running, although that was kind of the feature of it. So
well, and here you are, which what I thought was really impressive about this game, which I think was a strategy from your coach. You, as a triple option team in this game, you ran between the tackles all day long, and you were just gashing them with this boom. And you're getting all these yak yards after contact. I mean, these are massive explosions that we're looking at here. I mean, this is just all toughness. Now, I did want to point this out, Mike. Here, when we get to here, I'm going to pause this. Tell me, honestly, wouldn't you rather be in a 2-point stance? It's like you hate this 3-point stance,
yeah.
Right?
But it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the things that JY did, I don't know if you guys remember, we actually I don't know if you remember Herb Bieniemy from the University of Colorado. Yeah. They had actually come out with their eye bone, and actually we did dabble with the eye bone, where I was in 2-point stance, and it was just basically a broken bone with me in the eye. And I did enjoy that a lot better. But you know what? You just got to do what you got to do. And again, it's funny it's not so much funny, but just to echo what you were just saying, we were a triple option team, but it wasn't. But I mean, 60% of the yards I gained during my career were between the tackles. And
Yeah.
we were as much a power running team as we were a triple option team. I mean, hell, between the tackles, that was, I would say that was probably our bread and butter more than anything else. And the option was kind of was a change of pace.
And that's different than some of the other academies during this era, where like I know the Air Force Academy was all option, and same thing with you guys there, Bob. You guys were all quarterback to pitch.
Yep. A lot of well, yeah, they tried to do wishbone, like traditional wishbone. Think about Oklahoma, Nebraska, and those eras with players that weren't quite as big as some of those teams. So I think that switch to what they're doing now, or we're doing, in the late '90s, really helped out or optimized the players at the academies and their ability to perform.
So actually, there's some genius here in Coach Young putting you in that 3-point stance. You hate it so much, like all these muscles back here are so wound tight. By the time they snap this ball, you are rocketed out of there. You can't wait to get out of this stance. And look at this, whap, boom, that acceleration right there. Woo.
Yeah.
And you were right about that.
Yeah.
It's
Reminds me as being a safety, seeing him running through the tackles going, oh crap, here we go again. This is gonna hurt.
Did you get a couple of those, Rob?
Well, I don't know, Harrison, did you find that clip?
Oh, okay. So Bob, what we need some help from you. We got to get back to the Naval Academy SID and get some of these old videos up on YouTube.
Yeah. So during that Army Navy game, Mike, there was a time in the fourth quarter where you bust through, and I still don't remember the play because I made the tackle and I was laying on the ground. Then I'm getting up and then I'm laying on the ground, and I don't ever remember that play until I watched it on video, and the doc is walking off the field with me because I got knocked out. The difference between now and then is that I remember sitting on the sidelines, and all of a sudden everything became perfectly clear, and I like, all right, it's fourth quarter, scores this, and blah blah blah, and I was in the next play. So and finished out the game. So yeah, there's a whole section of the Army Navy game I don't remember.
Well, here's the good thing: you got to remember the best part of it, because that was your win. So that was that was my loss at 4 in a row over Navy. So
no, you were a hell of a running back and very hard to tackle. So congratulations on a very successful career there at Tower.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And back to toughness, man. What everyone doesn't know from this highlight right here, watch him slam it up there. Boom, that hit. You stayed on the field.
Yeah.
And you had to come out of the game. They walked you off the game there. Now this game's on the line too, right? This is like the final
I remember
drive.
that play. It was fourth down. We were pretty much, that was fourth down. If we don't get that, it's the ball game.
It was 4th and 2. Yeah, it was 4th and 2. And then you have this huge collision, and then you're back in the game 2 plays later. Here you are. Rest of the drive, like right back in. I mean, like this is not seen anymore, right? And we talk about like this toughness, and here you are right back, right between the tackles, bam, getting it down. Now this is for the game. The game is on the line here. Rutgers had just gone up with like a minute and 20 seconds left in the quarter, and here you go with a couple timeouts, but you have to drive this field, and there's no throwing. Actually, there was one pass that was thrown. And then this happens for the game winner.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Your good buddy here scores, and everybody is keying on you. Look at this. You just can't help it. That's the Mayweather right there. These two guys are all on some 30, and that opens up for the score. So
it's interesting It's interesting you bring it up because this was before the Air Force game, and actually this was the transition in our quarter because Brian McWilliams was a quarterback that I played with, up until that point. Willie McMillan became the starter, but it was real. Actually, that's not true. Really, it started a little bit more. It's my senior year, but that was pretty much kind of the change of the guard for us because that was right before the Vanderbilt game, and what happened. But really, and you pointed out something that that Calvin and we even talked about before, when the season was over. At that point, pretty much everybody played us the same way. They were not even thinking about the quarterback. And we lost an Air Force game where I think that was probably Willie's first start. And it was a little bit different, but he didn't really grasp the fact that he could have run crazy because it was all at that point, everybody was playing us from a pitch standpoint. It was, let the quarterback beat us. And so, but at that point, it was the changing of the guard, and it was, just kind of how things evolved, and the end of an era, I guess you would say.
We had some tough old school coaches. I'm not sure how you guys were, but like you mentioned, Uzelak, he was a Woody Hayes protege, and he wasn't soft. That's for sure. Many a practice, kid would get hurt. Get him off the field. I got to practice to run.
Yeah. And, it's so fun how I see all these smiles, right, when we hear that talk. And as we go back and we think about how tough they made it for us, and, that can be brought back in a way that is more, palatable in today's day and age. But at the same time, we can provide these moments of adversity to provide the belief in the guys that we coach to overcome and build this toughness. And Bob, you and Mike are the epitome of toughness. And I'm just so glad we got to have this conversation here tonight. And I love everybody's comments here in the chat, because we could go on all night and really discuss what is toughness anyway. Like, what does that even mean? Anywho, we're going to see it on December 10th of what toughness looks like. So, Bob, you want to give us some last closing remarks and, of course, your prediction for who's going to win on the 10th?
Oh, good one. Well, I'll go backwards, and Navy's due. They're going to win. I mean, should be a good game. I think I mentioned this before. Uniforms are out. I hope it's not on a dirt field, because then we won't be able to find Army like we couldn't find them in the snow the other year. But my starting shot would be, my hat's off to all you out there who are coaches, either whether that's in your job, on the field, or in the military. Keep challenging people, keep making them the best that they can be each and every day, and best wishes in your endeavors.
Thanks, Bob. Mike, over to you.
What is toughness? Army football. Plain and simple. I think as General MacArthur once said, I need a man for a dangerous mission. Give me a West Point football player. So, and we know what that means. You know what, Navy? Hey, got to take one on the chin this year.
Awesome. And if everybody, while we close out, want to put in who you think is going to win this game, and what do you think the score is going to be? And my favorite part of this game, honestly, is the end. Not because there's a winner and a loser. It's because everyone gets arm in arm together and celebrates the spirit of competitiveness and brotherhood. And that is what we are here to show and expand throughout our country, to bring these values of the military back to our communities so that we can develop and create leaders in America that is more resilient and tough than we were just a few years prior. So thank you, everybody. Happy Giving Tuesday. It's not too late. Support our soldier coaches. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.